I mean, honestly, at this point, I might as well just title the video, wasteful expenditure and theft. Here's why not to vote for the ANC. But the truth of the matter is that what other options do we legitimately have? Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Thank you for making your way back here again. And today's video, as you can tell, is going to be about the status of the nation, and we're going to be talking about the state capture in particular. So things got really hectic the past week at the State Capture Commission, and the testimony just left me like, wow. The one thing that I've realized is that if this commission does what we wanted to do, right, effectively we're going to be left with no leaders, because at this point, everybody's integrity has come into question, and it's clear that, they all seem to have a price, which is wild stressful, And I mean, look, it is a good thing that we do have the State Capture Commission, because we wanted to root out the rot and all the things that have been going on. The truth of the matter is that now, more than ever, is a time that we need, real leadership to rise up, and people who are really going to do things for the benefit of this country. I think the most important thing here is almost bringing it to people's remembrance that you're a civil servant first and foremost. So that means, you put aside your ambitions and your own personal goals, and you understand that every single thing that you're doing is for the good of the people that you're serving. It cannot be about yourself and how you're going to enrich yourself. And I feel like that has long been lost in this republic. Now, the thing that I realized in this commission is that of all the testimonies that we've been hearing, it's been enraging when you really think about the cost of corruption in this country, because now we have rand amounts that we can put to certain things, and it just blows my mind how so much money has been stolen, lost, or unaccounted for that really could have been used to do some real good in this country. So some of the testimony the commission heard was from Sydney Mufamadi, who basically says that David Mohlabo, when he was former Minister of State Security Agency, basically funneled 84 million rand in cash from the SSA to Jacob Zuma during 2015 to 2017. So let's just stop right there. 84 million rand in cash. I'm confused as to how that much amount of cash can be made available, and it didn't sound any alarms. So none of the banking regulators, no one saw anything, right, with that much money being made available. It just blows my mind. Because another thing that Sydney also mentions is that, he's provided evidence that David actually signed the receipt for this amount of money. So it was done. Now, according to Sydney, this money was made available for something called project commitment. And it's interesting because throughout, the testimonies, we realized that so many different projects were undertaken by the SSA, which were nefarious and really were not for the public good. The commission also heard that allegedly Jacob Zuma was receiving 2.5 million rand per month from the 2015 to 2016 financial year, and 4.5 million from the 2017 to 2018 financial year. That is so much money, and it blows my mind because I'm like, we're talking about someone who was already receiving, a salary as a president. So why this extra cash? Why was he also getting all of this extra money? What for? Sydney Mufamadi also testified that, the phrase special ops was used as a catch-all, really, for when the SSA was engaging in activities that fell outside of its function. And the acting DG, Loyiso Chafta, also said that, they were coming up with creative ways to basically circumvent the constitution because of the unlawful things that they were doing in terms of the constitution. So one of the ways is that operatives were given temporary advances, which was a way basically to just funnel money out of the SSA. So normally when there's a project, right, a project gets costed. And then after the project gets costed, you invoice for that project. And when it's approved, you then receive money. You don't just get this temporary advance and then it just allows money to just move out of the agency. It's clear that the agency got to the point where it really was functioning like an ATM without a pin, where large amounts of money were just able to just be funneled out. Unbelievable. The commission also heard testimony that it was allegedly David who told Jacob Zuma that he was being poisoned by one of his wives, Mandule, and that David then went to the SSA and secured a loan for 5 million rand. And this was called Project Tin Roof. So remember earlier I was talking about how there were these different projects. Well, Project Tin Roof was allegedly to secure housing for Mandula and her children since she was excommunicated because of this whole poisoning situation that was happening. It was also alleged that 800,000 rand per month was given to the former First Lady, I guess, for her general upkeep, which is confusing because already you're living in this house for 5 million rands, right? So I'm like, what else could you possibly be using this money for? Like, what are these expenses that would justify that much money? Because even if it was the amount of money given yearly, it's still so much money. So after the poisoning scare, toxicologists were made available basically to test the food and the bedding, of Jacob Zuma. And those costs were ranging from 500,000 to 1.5 million. So this is what the commission was hearing. And I can almost hear people who are like, well, it was important for his safety. We had to make sure that the president was safe whenever. I could almost hear that, and I could almost be okay with that. But the problem is that we have now heard all of the ways that money was wasted. That something like this now, I'm like, well, can I even, stand here and be like, well, we can justify that expense? Mind blown. At this point, we've heard about Project Commitment. We've heard about Project Tin Roof. Then there was Project Wave. Project Wave was allegedly set up to counter any negative local and international perception about Jacob Zuma and the country. Testimony was given that, various media houses and journalists were paid in this regard. I personally feel like it's time to name and shame. We really do have great journalists in this country who have done their work and have done it well, but they have had to be on the receiving end of some truly, truly hateful things. So I really would want to know who are those people who put their integrity on the line, or who are these people who had a price. Next up, there was Project Justice. So the commission heard testimony that the SSA funneled money to various judges to basically ensure, positive outcome for any cases that were against Jacob Zuma. And allegedly amounts ranging from 1.2 million to about 4.5 million were paid over to various judges. So I'm like, now we're in the place where our judiciary now is under threat. It's under jeopardy because money was being paid, to secure favorable outcomes, which again, further proves that, a lot of people have always felt that, we're not all equal above the law. Some are more equal than others. Next, we had Project Academia. Now, this one was allegedly set up to, I guess, target Fees Must Fall activists and other civil society organizations like Right to Know and Zuma Must Fall. And this one is incredibly problematic because here you have a government essentially targeting its own people. I mean, Section 17 of the Bill of Rights says that we have a right to protest, and to think that government was using its resources to basically spy and target citizens who were rightfully voicing their dissatisfaction is really, really disappointing. In all of this, Sydney Mufamadi places David Mahlobo squarely at the center of everything that was happening at the SSA. It was also alleged that the SSA, made funds available to disrupt the CR17 campaign. And I know a lot of Jacob Zuma supporters are very gung-ho on Cyril Ramaphosa making his bank statements available. And I'm for it as well. But I think, we should keep that same energy when it comes to Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma's bank statements being made available, because that is truly going to be scenes. The other thing that I heard mentioned quite a lot in all of this is that anytime, testimony had to be given, there was always this disclaimer or this question that was posed to say, does this not compromise national security? And I personally feel like, national security for so long has been used as a way of saying that, our government gets up to certain things and we're not allowed to question and we're not allowed to know. And I personally feel like national security to the side, we have a right to know what these people who are elected, to serve the public have been doing and how they've been using resources and state facilities, for their own benefit and not to the benefit of the people who've elected them. So outside of all of these millions and the various projects, another thing that we were made aware is so much money went missing or became unaccounted for. So for example, 9 billion, and that's billion, rands worth of assets between the 2015 and 16 financial year, I think it is, was unaccounted for, and 125 million rands also was unaccounted for between the 2017 and 2018 financial year. I'm confused. I really am confused, because even from an audit point of view, how is money just unaccounted for? And when it's unaccounted for, they just doesn't seem to be any consequences. Like, nothing ever seems to happen when that much money simply cannot be found. What's most troubling for me is all of the people who've been implicated, in the state commission and the testimonies that we've been heard. All of them are still employed by the government. So David Mahlobo now is the Deputy Minister of Human Settlement. The DG of State Security, or the former DG of State Security, Arthur Fraser, is now the DG of Correctional Services. And this is why it's so hard to take this government seriously when they talk about, that they're dealing with corruption and that they're fighting corruption, because it's like, how? Right? People who've been implicated in all of, these nefarious things and money going missing and all of these corrupt things are still being employed by the government. So you're basically just moving the rot around. It's never really being dealt with. And that's why time and time again, we still find ourselves dealing with these things. And that's why it's funny. And no one can ever take them seriously when they say we're dealing with corruption. How? And yes, I get it. None of them have been convicted. But for me, it's the appearance of evil. Right? And it's the fact that you were the heads, you were in charge, at these agencies when these things were going on. So we can't simply just be like, what are you going to do? And then you just move them around to other departments. Like, what is that? Speaking of more money, I guess, we heard testimony from two people who, requested to remain anonymous, that the ANC government, after Eugene de Kock was paroled, I'm sure we all know who Eugene de Kock was paroled, had spent 200,000 rand for his upkeep.
Bruh.
Why? Upkeep for what? Like, what? All of this was done under something called Operation Lock. The names of these operations and projects are not particularly creative, but okay. We also then heard that he got a state-sponsored house and a 40,000 rand monthly salary, and that all of this expenditure, no reasons were ever really given for it. I mean, is there a reason really that can be given to justify why someone like Eugene de Kock, when paroled, that much money was spent for his upkeep, and then he gets a state house, and then he gets a monthly salary? Like, what reason could possibly be given? And this is the one that I personally feel like the government really needs to explain to us, how an apartheid killer is now being taken care of by this government. I don't understand it. And again, speaking about more money, the Gauteng's MEC of Education, Panyaza Lesufi. It's wild though, because it really was a time where, he was everybody's favorite and people thought he was doing a good job. Anyway, he basically came out and, said that, he's so shocked. Everything is just shocking, by a report that was released by HOD and the CFO to basically say that 430 million, more than 430 million rather, was spent in disinfecting, decontaminating, deep cleaning schools in Gauteng. Now, I want you to realize what I'm saying here. 430 million rand was spent to disinfect and deep clean the schools of one province, just one. So now Panyaza says that he'll be working with the AG, to determine if, there was value for money. And I'm like, you don't need the AG to tell you that this was certainly no value for money. It's just a little confusing here, because it's come out that there were companies who were awarded tenders for this deep cleaning or whatever that weren't even around for that long. So companies that were literally just a couple months old, that didn't even have websites, were being awarded tenders for massive amounts of money to undertake this cleaning. This is where my questions really start to begin. So last year, the department had said that they would be making available 15,400 for 1,752, I think, schools. They would be making that amount of money available to those schools because they had determined that these schools had the undertaking, to do the cleaning themselves. So I'm guessing that 15,400 was just a way to kind of help them out a little bit. But that's what the department had, then communicated. Then Bidvest came out and said that they would be disinfecting 577 schools. So, as part of their corporate social responsibility or whatever it may be. But that's what Bidvest had said. So now I'm confused. where did the almost 400 million go to? Right? Because 1,700 plus schools were given 15,400 because it was determined that they have the capabilities to clean. Then 577 schools, Bidvest had said that they were going to do the cleaning. So where did this money go? And this isn't really the first time that things have gone kind of sideways in terms of money and the Department of Education in Gauteng. Almost 400 million was made available to build 2 schools. Problem? Those schools were never occupied because they were built on wetlands. Wow. So the students at the school in Tembisa had to attend classes in containers that were packed because the building that was made available to them could not be occupied because it's not safe, because it was built on wetlands. Now, that building had cost 83 million. So now you have 83 million that has just gone to waste. The second school was in Lindenhurst, Noktula School for Disabled Learners. And this school also, same problem. It was built on wetlands and almost 300 million was put into the school. Now, obviously, they could not occupy the school because the city of Joburg would not issue them with a certificate of occupancy. So now we have 383 million spent on schools that cannot be occupied. And this was 3 years ago, right? Now, what this means is that that money is now gone, and that more money would need to be made available in order to repair these schools, right? Because they've since deteriorated. So now more money has to be made available. And I'm like, my problem here is that someone approved these building plans, right? So when it was being thought about and they were like, okay, we're going to build these schools, for the kids, someone approved these building plans. And I'm like, people were clearly not doing their job, because if they were, someone would have known that, hold on, we're building on wetland. Like, that simply can't happen. But I guess due diligence is not really something that clearly exists in this government, because it was signed off, money was spent, people got paid, and now the buildings are there and the schools are there, but no one can occupy them. And they've since deteriorated. And if they have to be occupied, more money now needs to be spent to be like, whoa, okay guys, we can't really build on wetlands, we have to build somewhere else. It's like, I don't understand how they could be so careless and so reckless. And again, seemingly no consequences for any of these people except telling us how shocked they are. And in light of all of this, we now have to consider, the cost of living in South Africa. A report came out in the week that said that the basic food basket in this country now costs 4,000 Rand. That's above the minimum wage. And I think we are at the point now where we need to have an honest conversation about a living wage. And this food basket is really 43 basic items, right? That's what makes up this food basket. So things like bread, sugar, flour, beans, and rice, they've gone up in terms of prices somewhere between 31% to 68%. That's a lot. That's a lot, in terms of increase and how much food costs. And again, we're just talking about the basics here. So now, of course, enter Eskom, who have announced their plans for electricity tariffs, which is another thing that now will be increasing. South Africans now have to be paying even more for electricity. And this is the thing that infuriates a lot of people in this country, that whenever these organizations want to recoup the costs, somehow we have to bear the brunt of it all. And this is what I mean when I say corruption has a cost, because all of those millions that we've been discussing, all of that money could have been used for things like this, could have been used to help the people in this country who are struggling, because everything has now just increased and things are expensive. Corruption has a cost, and it costs lives. Lastly, speaking about vaccines, the government has said that undocumented people will be getting the vaccines, which I think is great. I think it's correct. And of course, the xenophobes are going to see it and they're going to be absolutely pissed about that. Then the government, or rather the Department of Health, said that they will be issuing out a tender for the storage and distribution of the vaccine. So that tender will be issued on Friday. And that just makes me nervous. I think as South Africans, anytime we hear tender, we just know that things are going to go really, really bad. Speaking of which, the vaccine arrives today. Well, our first shipment of the vaccine arrives today, which has me curious as to why can't it be stored wherever it's going to be stored now, right? Because if it's being received today and the tender is only being issued on the 5th of February, where will it be kept, and why can't we just keep it there the entire time? But yeah, guys, that is it. That is the end of the video. Please let me know your thoughts and your views on all of this madness that we have going on in this republic. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and yeah, just let me know your thoughts, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.